I see data sciences as evolving over three waves. The first wave is just a single flat table, and that's where the majority of statistical science was created, things like regression, factor analysis, cluster analysis, and so on, which of course has been the mainstream of much of what in marketing we call customer insights, perceptual mapping, a lot of the work that you have done in latent space analysis and so on really functions on single tables. But then single tables captured only one part of the picture, and then statistical science then moved on to simultaneous analysis of multiple tables, but they still functioned on tables where there's rows and columns, and most of data science really cannot even deal with missing data analysis, which I expect us to have rampant amounts in the epicenter.
One of my most obscure pieces is how do you fill in missing data in regression rather than, truly obscure piece.
And I worked on the problem of how do you do factor analysis with missing data, which is even more difficult problem.
Yeah. Long-term puzzle.
Right. And the second wave of analysis I see is where you go into unstructured data, where you still have rows, but the columns are what we would call ragged arrays. So meaning that not all rows have the same amount of observations or features. And the classic instance of that is text analysis, where you can think of an email as a row, and you have some attributes associated with each email, but not all attributes are shared by all objects. And of course, there's an entire body of techniques associated with natural language processing. And the third is where there's not any rows at all. Where you just have nodes in a network, and each node is associated with certain attributes, and there's relationships among nodes. So that's something really new, and that I see as the most relevant data model that needs to be embraced for the epicenter. You can think of it as tripartite graphs, and connections between groups. So there's one group of nodes is the teams, another group of nodes is the student teams, another group of nodes is the sponsor, and the third group of nodes is the faculty member or the advisors. So one can do a lot of sophisticated analysis on this, but I think the initial alpha service built on Monday.com APIs or data retrieved from Monday.com would be on taking the model that Tom Malone did at Xerox PARC and the MIT Center for Coordination Science, which is to really pose it as a problem of information distillation, meaning that trying to identify for each student group what the most similar student groups are, so that they could look at the documentation and not have to reinvent the wheel. This avoidance of the reinvention of the wheel problem
big deal
is the poison that that is a major impediment towards making real impact. I mentioned earlier, before the recording started, the problem I see with the AMR groups again and again and again, which is that each group starts from scratch and does only 15% of the problem. And if every group did a different 15%, it wouldn't be so bad. But the problem is that everybody is mostly doing the same 15%. And therefore, what I've noticed in AMR is that the sponsor gets therefore disenchanted and less enthusiastic over time, because the sponsor is seeing the same stuff repeated, and that's a big problem.
Conservation.
Because sponsors are very hard to get. They need to be nurtured. Their excitement needs to be kept up. And one way to do that is to have each group learn what the predecessor did on similar projects.
Exactly.
so that, I mean, I'm finding this in the MSBA program, where the first time I taught it, I was responsible in some way of bringing sponsors in and keeping them happy. And they were excited enough to sign on again. But then the next group did very similar work because they were starting from scratch.
Oh, wow.
And
so you have an internship model or that kind of a practicum model right in the business analytics.
Yes, exactly.
Well,
so I already have a lot of experience with the problems of the kind I anticipate.
Yeah.
With this action,
Yeah.
with this action.
Well, it's very relevant.
Research epicenter. Yeah. So if we, so I'm pointing out two separate problems.
Yeah.
One is that if the student group is revisiting the same 15%, they're not going to achieve a lot because they're just dealing with the initial part of the problem. But more importantly, it's going to diminish enthusiasm from the sponsor if the sponsor does not see much progress, and then there's going to be sponsor attrition, and then you run into this problem of trying to repeatedly get new sponsors to join, and that's a thankless task. It's much better to have the same group of sponsors stay and the impact go on increasing over time, rather than have this very elementary problem solving in a sponsor group that is repeatedly turning over because they are unhappy.
Right. You've got to have learning over time, particularly within project. Yes. And Monday.com, well, they have said something about learning within accounts. They're only counting numbers. They have no access to the text content. So their learning has to be, I don't know what they can learn.
Right.
But doing the text stuff is the key to building a history, so you don't have to start from zero every time.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what Conservation International wanted.
And for the moment, it is just going to be not high-level concept identification and so on with some of the more modern natural language processing methods are trying to do. So, for example, summarization of reports, okay, or abstraction of ideas, saying, oh, this is this meta idea that's emerging. There's this technique called latent Dirichlet allocation, which is a fancy, it's just a factor analysis, really, in new clothing, And
that's what I mean by translation, because I'm not going to go look it up.
Yes. So you can sort of abstract ideas and say, oh, this group, which doesn't look at all similar to this other group, is actually similar if you look at it in this high level manner. And then, of course, you got to explain to the student team as to why this other group, which seems nothing like, like the focal group, needs to be, why it is similar. So that I see as the second or third generation. Yeah. So that's why I want to temper your expectations.
Oh, yeah.
And say that the initial year or years even is going to be largely on trying to point new groups to work that has been done by other groups, so that they don't lose the time reinventing the work.
But it's using text to develop a recommendation engine, and that's
using text and also this sponsor networks. There's a graph structure.
Yeah, but so those are the basic tools of anything more elaborate that you do.
Yes. I think that the science is not, because neither you nor I want to be developers of natural language processing techniques.
No.
What we want to be is intelligent monitorers of natural language processing, the new methods that are coming out, and just implementing and using those methods. So I am fairly literate about the new things that are coming out of natural language processing and graph mining. So I'm just going to be using the most mature technology in that. Perfect. So I hope So I just want to temper your expectations. And the MSBA groups too, they're not methodology developers. What I would do to them is to say, read this manual of SPSS or SAS. By the way, SPSS has become, we used to think of it as being this
Number 2.
as being bad, right? But since SPSS has been taken over by IBM, and IBM has a very sophisticated natural language toolkit and processing. And similarly, so SAS developed this product called Enterprise Miner, where they've gone full scale into natural language and text mining. So, my guidance is going to be on saying, okay, use this module of SAS Enterprise Miner, this, on this data set, and this is what you can do with it. And that is going to get us to generation 2 or 3 over time.
Wonderful. Anand, this is exactly the kind of roadmap that I want to see and enjoy.
Excellent. Okay. No, because since our email communication of the weekend, I was thinking of what I would say to you. And the big thing I wanted to say to you is that the initial rollout is just going to be focused on facilitating human learning.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And then having the machines and the algorithms do the learning and present, more fine things, that'll come later on.
Yes. But implicit in that is that you're learning from a stream. And
Yes.
MS Business Analytics can help develop the templates
Yes.
that meet the data that you wish to follow.
Right.
So,
And we can make this a sort of steady pipeline of projects for the MSB people, because they're constantly coming to me and asking for projects.
Okay, well, I got to tell, thank you. I got to tell that to the steering committee tomorrow.